Heavenly and gracious God, I give you thanks for this wonderful day. I ask you to guide me as I do this message, guide my thoughts, and guide me through this whole thing. Keep me from crying, Lord. Or emotional. We'll start off with the Gospel of Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law?" He replied. "How do you read it?" He answered. This is the guy asking. "Lord, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus says, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road. When he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, he came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to the inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave it to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said. 'When I return, I will reimburse you for all the extra expense you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
First of all, a couple words of warning. Number 1, I am not a pastor. In case you haven't figured that out. So this account is my interpretation of this gospel, so not from an ordained minister. So this is my interpretation of this parable. Second, I will be getting emotional. I will do my best to hide the choke-up moments, but please know that I'm sharing some personal stories. As most of you have seen in the past, I tear up pretty easily, so be prepared. Get your tissues ready. For those that know Jimmy Buffett fans out there might recognize the similarities of my title, "A Christian Looks at 40," sermon title, to the song, "A Pirate Looks at 40." In Jimmy Buffett's song, he reflects on this point of life in a humorous way that most of us can relate to. I love Jimmy Buffett. So today I'm going to take a little bit of your Sunday to reflect on this bend in life, since I just turned 40 on Wednesday. I grew up in a Disciples of Christ church in downtown Bardstown, Kentucky. Every Sunday morning, my mom got us dressed up and sat the 3 of us down in a pew and shushed us all the way through the service. Church was important to my mom, or Ma, as I like to call her. She took us to church, the church she grew up in, and that her dad was a big part of it. Mom used Christian values as a basis of raising us, and her actions spoke loudly. She was always giving my brother, sister, and I life advice, good old mom wisdom. She didn't just teach us about Jesus, she showed us with her actions to be like Jesus. I recall my mom driving us back from one of our many school activities on a hot summer day and going up the big, steep, long Allison Hill when she saw an elderly African-American woman walking home from work. Mom stopped and asked her if she would like a ride. The lady said very politely, "Oh, yes, ma'am. My car broke down last week, and I've had to walk that hill every day, and you are the first one to offer me a ride." Well, that stuck with me. Anyone who knows my mom will know she has a vigorous compassion for people. She was a wonderful role model for my siblings and I. My father taught me a lot as well. His biggest lesson to me was about redemption. During my younger years, he didn't really attend church, unless one of us kids had something going on. He seemed somewhat disinterested. I would ask my mom why Dad didn't have to go to church, and she would tell us some excuse that made us all go, mm-hmm. Well, don't get me wrong. I think my dad raised us very well and gave us a million life lessons. But he just wasn't a church guy back then. When I was in my early teens, my dad went through a transformation. He had a major life event that basically changed him forever. After this, he started attending church. He started getting involved. He started studying the Bible. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual, and I went to the bathroom. That was across from the bedroom. I glanced in his room in those early hours and saw him quietly reading the Bible. He was so into what he was reading, he didn't even notice that I was watching. He found his higher power. Now, he serves on multiple boards of the church, volunteers a lot, and even goes to overnights for the homeless and stays with them during the wintertime so they have a place to sleep, a warm place. He has been redeemed. My minister when I was a kid was Dr. Rick Logan. He was also a big part of my adolescent Christianity. One summer I attended church camp, I think it was 8th grade. Pretty cool that all the church camp counselors were here. During one of the camp small groups, there was a question I was afraid to ask. You guys are going to get kids that won't want to ask these questions, I bet. Dr. Rick picked me up from that camp a couple days later, and so I asked him, because I felt comfortable with him. We had a 4-hour car ride that was full of great conversations about the Bible. I had been through confirmation and baptism before that. Went through the classes and everything, but that car ride changed me. And that's where my Christian journey really began. When I was a freshman in high school, I had a math teacher. His name was Mohammed Shams. Mr. Shams was very different from what I was used to because all my teachers before that were white women. And here was an Iranian American Muslim teaching this scrawny redhead about the quadratic equation. I really had nothing to compare him to. Before Mr. Shams, I can honestly say I didn't really care about school. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He gifted me with the love of mathematics and showed me that math is an art. He opened my eyes to possibilities in my career, either as a teacher like him or an engineer. During class, he would sometimes talk to God. He would walk over to the window and say, "God, are you there? Mr. Alex needs your help with this question." A few minutes later, I'd figure out how to solve the question. He'd walk back over the window and he'd say, "Thank you, God." He was an immigrant that inspired me and he still does. A few years later, I went to the University of Kentucky and got a degree in engineering. I worked a lot for a young man back then. At one time, I had 3 jobs to pay rent, buy groceries, and basically survive. My grade sucked. I had to have a certain GPA and certain classes to get into engineering school. I wasn't going to make it. Miss Janet Gurrick, my counselor, was so great. She told me, "Alex, I have seen thousands of kids come through that door, and some just don't have what it takes, but I know you do." Her and I set up a plan and stuck to it. I got into engineering school. Years later, I took my wife and Aiden to meet her, so I could thank her for giving me the courage to stay at it. I wanted her to see she made a difference. During those college years, this is where it gets tough, folks. During those college years where I was attending a UK basketball game, I saw a girl. I told my buddy, I said, "Hey, look at that gal's eyes over there. Wow." Well, a month later, that girl moved in across the street from my apartment. We hung out a while, and then we couldn't get enough of each other. She worked at Blockbuster, and she would call me on her breaks. And as soon as she got home, we would get together. One night, I was stuck in the library trying to finish the homework I was due the next day. She showed up in her PJs checking on me at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's love, folks. Julie changed me. I was starting down a path that year of utter chaos. I felt lost. She came into my life just when I needed her the most. She settles down. She made me want to be a better man. And I wanted to make her happy, and I wanted to make her proud. That's what true love does. Here we go. I know that I would not have finished school if if she hadn't come into my life at that very moment. I love you. Well, Julie's family was also part of the package. At the beginning, they sure gave me a hard time. The first time I met them, her mom, Linda, picked us up from the airport. She took us out to dinner and she asked me a bunch of questions that moms were supposed to ask. I was a little nervous, but relaxed some as dinner went on. After dinner, we went to meet her dad, Paul, and her brother, Scott, at a golf club because they were in a tournament that day. I got out of the car, and this guy came up to me, and he had the snaggle hillbilly teeth. And he walks up to me, and he said, "You must be Alex, because I'm Paul." Well, it ended up being just a friend of theirs, not Paul. With a big teeth. So Paul and Scott both came up to me, and they were laughing and staring, and they introduced themselves. And after all that, we had a great weekend. Her oldest brother, Mark, and I didn't meet until about a year later because he was living on the East Coast at the time. First time we hung out, I didn't really do much to impress. I ended up telling a bad joke at a party and getting in trouble by Julie later that night. It took a couple years for me to stop trying so hard to impress them and just be myself. Paul, Linda, Mark, Scott, and Don have also changed. Just as I said, with Julie, Perkins family has made me want to be a better person. They've always encouraged me to work hard and try my best at everything I do. Every time the family gets together, there's always seems to be some sort of competition. Either with board games, sport of some kind, or anything that sounds fun. Well, that competitive spirit made me want to be as successful. Make them proud, and I love them. After college, I went on to work in Steelville, Middletown, Ohio. I worked a swing shift with a different crew every week. It was a tough job. I had days that Julie would call me 2 or 3 times to see why I wasn't home yet. It was one of the most stressful things I'd ever done, and still to this day. During that stint, another manager with the same job as me took me under his wing. His name was Eddie. Eddie was a big black man with a gentle smile and a lovely personality. Imagine the dad on Family Matters. That's what Eddie looked like. That was me. Well, one of Eddie's favorite saying was, "Know when to hold them, and know when to fold them." In other words, you have to know when the situation is out of hand and get involved. Otherwise, let the people that know how to do their jobs do their jobs. I try to stick to that to this day. If it wasn't for Eddie, I don't think I would have lasted 2 weeks in that job. His wise words stuck with me, and I use them now to teach the younger guys that I manage. A few years go by, and we ended up in Missouri. I went on to work for a family-owned manufacturing company called Ace Manufacturing. We sell mostly automotive clutches and parts. We make them there in Sullivan. The family that owns this business is the Ines. Carl is the founder and CEO, and Kevin is the president, my boss. They hired me as a mechanical engineer in 2006. For several years, both of them guided me in the principles of product design and business management. They also saw potential in me and promoted me from mechanical engineer to engineering manager and now operations. Kevin asked me 4 or 5 years ago to further my education and pushed me to get my master's degree in engineering and management. When I enrolled to get my master's, Julie and I would build a house and we had a baby at home. I may not have slept much back then, but I got it done because I wanted to make Kevin and my family proud. He let me use my best judgment to get that education and manage my family at the same time. He always knew just how much to push me so that I didn't burn out too stressed to be good at what I do. Nowadays, him and I have a trusted relationship that makes going to work a challenging and rewarding experience. I will forever be grateful that God guided me behind this family in my career. When we first moved to Missouri, we lived in Cuba. We tried out a couple churches in Cuba, but Julie always felt called to her own church here in Steelville. At first, I was kind of along for the ride. After some time, I got to know people here at Steelville Presbyterian and realized this is my home church too. We dove into helping with the youth, and I became a member and was quickly asked to be an elder on the session. People in this church made a connection with me, and I with them. One thing for sure is this church can cook. So I heard about this famous fried chicken that Carol Banner makes. Well, folks, I figured out how you can get some of that. You blow yourself up on a jet ski. Well, for those of you who don't know, I was in a horrible accident a few years ago during my recovery. This church took great care of me and my family with food, support, and most important, prayers. I thank God for bringing me to this church. It's a great example of how we can take care of each other. During that trying time, I was on the pastor nominating committee in search of a new pastor. In that process, I witnessed the grace of God leading us to Pastor Wendy and her to us. Since I've been attending this church, we seem to always have been in a constant state of transition. When the Lord graced us with Pastor Wendy, our prayers were answered. It seems like we found a missing piece of the puzzle. She has been a true breath of fresh air to this church and our community. Wendy has reached out to help many folks in Steelville and give them back to me. In doing so, we have seen some new faces from time to time attending worship or other church events. This week she's on vacation, hence why I'm here. And in preparing for today, all she asked me for was a verse and the songs. She prepared the bulletin, she prepared the PowerPoint, she was on it, and we love her for that. Pastor Wendy has been teaching us about the Gospel of Luke for the past couple of weeks now. In this week's Gospel reading, Jesus is getting questioned by a person they are calling a lawyer, meaning they were experts in the Jewish law from the Torah. It seems the questioner wants to make Jesus look bad by asking a question that most would stumble on. Instead, Jesus puts the spotlight back on the question by saying, what does the law say? This person, being an expert in the law, knows the answer and summarized by saying, you shall love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus basically says, well, there you go. And the man then asks, well, who is my neighbor? Jesus begins the parable of the Good Samaritan. To truly understand Jesus' parable, one has to understand the context. Jesus is speaking of a road from Jerusalem to Jericho that is known to be treacherous in both terrain and villainous people. It was a dangerous place. The victim in the story, assumed to be Jewish, he was attacked, mugged, and left for dead. Two passers-by saw him and purposely went to the other side of the road. Jesus made a point to say they were a priest and a Levite. We all know what Jesus meant by a priest, but what's a Levite? Well, a Levite was somebody that helped a lot in worship, kind of like a deacon or an acolyte. Both of these men were probably known to be upstanding character and were probably the same as the guy asking the question. Jesus is going out of his way to make the questioner relate to the man on the ground and the passerby. What does Jesus say next? Kind of a surprise. He brings a Samaritan into the story. Well, who are Samaritans? The Samaritans were known as half-breeds, both physically and spiritually. They practiced open hostility toward the Jews. In the previous chapter, Luke described the scene where Jesus isn't welcome into a Samaritan town. This story was likely added to Luke's gospel to provide some context to the parable. The Samaritan is the hero of the story. He sees this bleeding and broken Jew on the side of the road and provides him with care. He gave him a ride on his donkey, he paid money for him to stay at the inn, and even told the innkeeper he would come back and pay for extra days. Now that's a good neighbor, even better than State Farm. Jesus now turns the question back to the lawyer and asks the obvious question of who was the neighbor to this man. The man answers, notice he wouldn't even say Samaritan. Instead, he says, one who had mercy on him. Jesus replies, so would do likewise. Jesus is telling the lawyer to do something like someone he detests, someone he hates. Why? Why would Jesus have the Samaritan as the good neighbor? I think Jesus was trying to show the guy that he shouldn't just take care of people just like him. Please God, you got to take care of everybody. Be neighborly. You got to take care of everybody. Let's imagine that Jesus switched the roles and the man on the side of the road was a Samaritan and the good neighbor was the Jew. Would it have the same impact? Probably not. Because the Samaritans were hated so much that the lawyer would never believe that a Jew would help someone like that. Someone like a Samaritan. No way. Also, I think Jesus wants the lawyer to relate to the hurt man and know what it would feel like to be neighbor to somebody that shouldn't even give you the time of day. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody helps you out? You get the warm fuzzies in your stomach. You know what I'm talking about? You feel really good. This person helped me. It could be at a store. It could be here at church. It could be on a road, anywhere. Somebody's helped you in your life and you feel good. You feel like this tingle in your stomach. Man, it's so nice of them to do that. Well, I think Jesus was doing that on purpose so we could feel the warm fuzzies. A few minutes ago, I described people in my life that fundamentally changed into a better man. They picked me up when I was down. They encouraged me. They were positive influences in my life. And they showed me how to live a good life. They were the ones that gave me the warm fuzzies in my life. And they were my good neighbors. Most appear to think of a neighbor or had a good one that they could think about for later. But let me remind you of the most neighborly Christian that ever existed, and that's Jesus Christ. Jesus didn't just help us when we're down. He gave up everything to save us from sin. He didn't just give up his donkey, he gave up his life. He is the ultimate good neighbor. Like Mr. Rogers, Jesus wants us all to be his neighbor. If you're going through a difficult time, ask him to enter your heart. He will get you off the road. In this parable, Jesus does an amazing job showing us how to mimic his grace. He shows us how to be a neighborly Christian. I challenge you all to be like him and the people I listed that made a difference in my life. Try to be an influence in someone else's life, even if it means giving up the saddle on your donkey. As I make this bend in life, turning 40, I want to take Jesus' advice and go be likewise. Amen. Please join me in standing, giving me a call.